Hello, this is Dejon Hill. I'm here to talk about photosynthesis, the concept maps. I'll just get straight to it, starting with the light reaction, which is the reaction that produces oxygen molecules. You can see that up to the top left. In the upper right corner, put a note there that it utilizes light energy, carbon dioxide, and H2O, or water, in order to do what it needs to do. The light reaction, going down to the left there, begins when a photon of light excites the electrons that are located inside chlorophyll. That same photon of light is absorbed into the reaction center chlorophyll A, which causes a transfer of electrons. I'll go further into where they go next, but the electrons are would provide the energy in order to pump. You see their hydrogen ions, the H plus, and those electrons that are transferred from the system, which I'll explain how this is photosystem 2. Those electrons are replaced by the oxygen evolving complex after splitting water molecules. So we see water being put to use there. And so those same hydrogen ions, as I mentioned, they're taken from the water molecules and they're pumped across the thylakoid membrane. And that gives ATP synthase what it needs as far as energy in order to link ADP and phosphate to form ATP. And that ATP is located in the stroma. As I mentioned earlier, that is photosystem 2, which occurs before photosystem 1, which is where those electrons eventually go to that I mentioned. So back up in the upper middle part, those electrons are transferred to plastoquinone, which transfers electrons to the cytochrome B6F complex. And then from there, electrons are transferred to plastocyanin. Those electrons are excited by light and then transferred to ferredoxin, which is oxidized by ferredoxin NADP plus reductase, and that enzyme reduces NADP plus, and it transfers hydrogen ions to NADP plus, and from there it's converted to NADPH. And as I mentioned earlier, that is photosystem 1. So those are the parts of photosynthesis that directly use energy from light in order to do what they need to do. Uh, from there, the main part of photosynthesis for the plant is to produce whatever organic molecules it needs to actually live. So, I mean, the light reaction, I guess, is good for us. We get our oxygen, and then the dark reaction, also known as the Calvin cycle, that occurs in the stroma, like I mentioned, to produce glucose, and this occurs in the absence of light energy or without direct light energy. And it utilizes the ATP from photosystem 2 and then NADPH, which was produced in photosystem 1. And this process um, involves carbon dioxide bonding with ribulose biphosphate, also known as RUBP. And that reaction is catalyzed by RUBP carboxylase oxygenase. From there, the ribulose biphosphate and carbon dioxide, they form a 6-carbon molecule, and that molecule splits into 2 copies of 3-phosphoglycerate. And from there, these molecules, the 3-phosphoglycerate molecules, take a phosphate from ATP, which, as I mentioned earlier, the ATP was produced in photosystem 2, and as a result, what forms is 1,3-biphosphoglycerate, basically indicating at that point now that it has 2 phosphates attached. Um, that would be to the 1 carbon and to the 3 carbon. And then from there, NADPH is reduced to NADP plus, So again, another phosphate is taken from NADPH this time, and as a result, copies of glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate occur. So now it has 3 phosphates. Some of those go on to form the organic compounds that I mentioned that a plant needs. Sometimes that'll be glucose or sucrose, um, whatever the case may be. But another one of those glyceraldehyde 3-phosphates eventually goes back into this Calvin cycle as it takes an ATP it takes a phosphate from ATP in order to form ribulose biphosphate, which is RUBP, and at that point it just waits on another carbon dioxide to be bound again, and that cycle just keeps occurring as much as the plant needs it to. So that is it. That's photosynthesis in a nutshell, and those are my concept maps. Thank you.